Hello and welcome to the latest Royal Roundup from TalkTV. So pop the kettle on. This is the Royal Tea. I'm Sarah Hewson. Coming up on today's show, find out which actor had the Princess of Wales flustered at Wimbledon, why Harry's memoir Spare is polluting Europe's top holiday destinations, and did the Duke and Duchess of Sussex really ask for a ride on Air Force One? Joining me to discuss all that and lots more, a royal commentator and TalkTV regular Afua Hagan, TalkTV host Daisy McAndrew, and author and historian Dr. Tessa Dunlop. Now, the Princess of Wales reminded us all last weekend why she is the Queen of Wimbledon. She made a total of 3 appearances across the tournament, including both Saturday and Sunday for the women's and men's final. The Sunday men's final was a family affair, wasn't it? We saw them all there minus Louis. We had Charlotte and George there.
We did have Charlotte and George there, absolutely loving the tennis. I think Princess Charlotte was channeling Prince Louis with her facial expressions, cheering. She had some cute sunglasses on as well.
Which then went on to sell out,
Of
didn't they?
course. Of course, we expect nothing less with all their outfits. But yeah, great to see them all there enjoying the tennis, And it was an incredible weekend of tennis, like absolutely monumental. So they definitely picked the right year to show up. And I wonder if Prince Louis was at home watching on TV going, I wish I was there.
His time will come.
It will.
It will. I mean, it was lovely to see them. And of course, you can see why they got so excited. I mean, Alcaraz, who won, Carlos Alcaraz, is closer to their age than any of the other players. He's only just out of his teens himself. So I could completely understand why they got so excited to see this underdog take on Djokovic. And again, you can see Charlotte being such a chip off the old block with Kate, who we know is fanatical about tennis herself. She's the patron. I mean, ridiculous stories this week saying, oh, wasn't it good of the rest of the royals to allow Kate to be centre stage? Well, of course she's going to be centre stage at Wimbledon. It's her thing.
Yeah.
She's the patron. She's a very accomplished tennis player herself. We saw her with Federer.
Training to be a ball girl.
Training to be a ball girl. And we've heard these stories that George would like to be a ball boy, apparently, when he's older. So really sweet.
And some celebrities in the royal box as well. And one caught Kate's eye, according to viewers watching at home.
Was our eye being caught, and therefore
James Norton among them.
Projected onto Kate. And there's also a bit of a hoo-ha. Should Daniel Craig, the Bond, have risen from his flippy seat when Kate acknowledged him? I thought no, actually. I mean, we expect... There is etiquette around the royals. She is the Princess of Wales, but he was sitting. It's not like she's the old woman.
There were other people sitting behind him as well.
You would for the late Queen, but I don't think Kate would have expected that. But I noticed there was a little hoo-ha about it.
And there was also hoo-ha earlier in the week when John McEnroe, the former player and commentator himself, said that he didn't really like it when the players have to bow and curtsy to the royal box. He felt that. And I think a lot of people do find that a bit uncomfortable. He was saying that he found it very sort of old-fashioned and hierarchical. And he made this sort of off-the-cuff, and I think it was a jokey comment, saying that the talent, the reason everybody's there is for the players, and therefore, maybe the royals should be bowing and curtsying to the players. Well, he got so much, he got attacked for that. As he would.
He clearly doesn't know what it's like to comment on the royals. I got attacked because I suggested, actually via my mother, that perhaps dear George, about to be 10, didn't need to be dressed like a bank manager. Because if you look at Alcaraz's brothers, they were rather cool in their Air Texes, looking the part. And I felt that perhaps a looser ensemble would have worked better, and that didn't go down well at all.
Well, I can kind of get that, actually, for a sporting event. Perhaps look a little bit more sporty. I don't know.
But there's a dress code in the royal box.
There is a dress code in the royal box. Let's go back to some of those celebrities that we were mentioning, because Brad Pitt...
Yeah. Wow. Let's just put it out there. Wow. Wow.
A real-life Benjamin Button.
A real-life Benjamin Button.
And made eating crisps look cool.
Just looking absolutely incredible. I mean, apart from the tennis, he was the best thing about the day.
And I loved it when people pointed out that if you added the ages of the 2 players, as in Djokovic being this old man of tennis, plus Carlos Alcaraz, you still don't get to how old Brad Pitt is.
Yeah,
It was amazing.
Wow.
And then Daniel Craig, who we've talked about, 007, and James Norton, potentially the next Bond.
Yes. Or had them all together, but if something happened, there'd be no Bonds left. Idris Elba was there as well.
And Tom Hiddleston, he's been rumoured as
he
being
was there
a contender.
too. And they had Lewis Capaldi, not about to be Bond, but was there with Emma Watson, Ariana Grande, basically who wasn't there.
And I think Kate does really work. She really shines. She's been the patron, I think, since 2016, but it's where her brand, I think, is best utilised. She's extraordinary.
There were viewers watching on television thinking that William was keeping a close eye on her when she was chatting to James Norton.
Oh yes, there were people saying that he looked, rather jealous, and that there was some flirting. And then, of course, earlier in the week there was the story about who was it that she was sitting next to, whose wife or girlfriend got rather cross.
Yes,
Federer.
Was it
Federer?
Yes, it was
Federer. He
Federer.
got the standing ovation, didn't he? And she was standing next to him, and
her clothes. I know it's a bit like we talk about the clothes, but she is worth a £1 billion industry. Even The Guardian was waxing lyrical on the value of Kate to the fashion industry. Those greens just so cleverly done. The throwback to Diana with the oversized blazer in that Pacer mint green. And then on the last day, the emerald green dress. It was just absolutely pitch perfect.
And pre-Wimbledon, we did have a full family engagement at the Royal International Air Tattoo, where we saw Louis being taken along as well. And those kind of engagements where they all go along, including Louis with them, are really carefully chosen, Afua, aren't they? Because they're fun, they're age appropriate.
Yeah, and it's something that the kids can be really engaged in. We get to see the best of them, and you're right, they're really well chosen. The last time we saw them all together like that was a couple of days after the coronation, the big help out, where we saw them with diggers and with the scouts, doing all those really hands-on things. The International Royal Air Tattoo, and incredible event, and great to see them there enjoying, coming out of the aircraft carrier. Unfortunately, the weather didn't play ball, but it's definitely an ideal event for them, and something that Prince George had been at a few years earlier. Some really cute pictures of him with air defenders on. So very well chosen events that will see us get the best out of the kids.
And it's quite interesting that obviously the pictures are really important. They're really important to the royal family because they know that those pictures will inevitably, particularly if they've got Louis or if they've got all 5 of them, that they will get beamed around the world. But there are also other messages that are being spoken with those pictures, particularly the affinity with the armed forces and the military. And we're already, George we're going to be talking about later, he's about to turn 10. People are already discussing, is he going to go into the army or the navy or the air force? Should he, as a future king, do his bit for his country and understand from the inside? And you kind of think, poor thing, he's 9 years old.
He's not even 10, yes. The sovereign grant has been changed after the Crown Estate saw a surge in profits due to offshore wind projects. The fund, used to finance the monarchy's official duties, will be 12% of the Crown Estate's net profits from next year. That's down from 25% at the moment. Daisy, why has this cut been put in place?
It's one of my favourite facts about where the royal family, and of course now specifically the King's wealth, comes from. And increasingly so, as you intimated in your introduction, Sarah, it comes from the fact that he owns the seabed around the coast of our island, which I don't know why it amuses me so much, but it really does. And this all goes back to when oil in the North Sea and so on was discovered. The government at the time was scratching its head saying, well, who owns the seabed? Who's going to get the money from this? And it was a bit of a fudge that they kind of said, well, let's say that it's the royal family who owns the seabed. They don't get all the money, and that's really important to emphasise. The money all goes to the Treasury, and then the Treasury gives some of it back to the royal family. And it's been traditionally about 15%, of not just the money from the seabed, but all the money. And then it comes back. It went up to 25% to pay for the huge eye-watering costs to renovate and refurb and fix up Buckingham Palace. But because the pie, the amount of money has got considerably bigger, the percentage can go down and still maintain the royal family in the manner to which they're accustomed.
It's a really convenient headline in some ways. I saw it scrolled, sovereign grant cut in two. It makes it look like we've got a king in sackcloth and ashes.
On a bicycle.
Prince to pauper, relating to the cost of living. But actually, if you look at the small print, he is not taking a hit.
The money stays the same next year. It's
Yes, it does.
£86.3 million. But actually, the public purse does get a boost
Gets
from
a
these
benefit.
offshore wind farms.
Absolutely.
And it's 24 million, I think, next year that he would have got extra, and that's going to rise. And we know that when the details of these offshore wind farm deals had been announced, Afua, the King had made it clear at that point he did want the money to go for the greater good.
Yeah.
Was the way it was described.
Absolutely. He wanted that to go back into the public purse. And, he said that in January, where people were dealing with still spiralling energy costs, at a time where energy use was pretty high, not as high as we get into the summer, but we still have this cost of living crisis. Inflation still remains high. People are still struggling to pay bills. And I think people will see this as a positive, that this money from these offshore wind farms is still going into the public purse. If you have greater profits for it, perhaps the public purse will get more, and the royal family is not taking as much as it should. It's still getting sort of the same amount of around that 86 million. I think people will see this as a positive, and also the royal family can spin this as a positive. This can be some positive PR for them, which they need.
It takes the pressure off other issues like inheritance tax and things which they're able to dodge.
And it also dovetails very nicely into the King's own personal hobby horse of being as green and environmentally friendly as possible, sustainable, because the reason they're making this amount of money is because wind farms are really mushrooming everywhere. I mean, we now produce more wind from wind farms than any country in the world apart from China. So it is a significant impact that it's having.
We've seen this big boost
in the income.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, military personnel across the United Kingdom honoured the 76th birthday of Queen Camilla. It was the first time during the reign of King Charles. In London, the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery fired a 41-gun salute at noon, and members of the Honourable Artillery Company fired a 62-gun royal salute on Tower Wharf. And during the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace, the Irish Guards Band played Happy Birthday to Her Majesty. And it is a week for royal birthdays because the future king, Prince George, as we were describing earlier, will be turning 10 this weekend. In terms of royal childhoods, Tessa, I mean, things have changed a lot, haven't they? There is a real effort to give him as normal a childhood as possible within the confines of a royal family.
It's interesting because when the Queen was a young woman, she was liaising regularly with the press about how much access they could have to Charles when he was at his preparatory school, then on up to Gordonstoun. This has been really the press trying to push the envelope, the royal family trying to hold them back, but also recognising the lifeblood of their popularity comes from exposure. It is the conundrum. And look who we want to talk about. Are we going to hover long on a 76th birthday? No. Let's quickly talk about Prince George and his pending 10th. Because there's something, they are our family, our national family. In them, through them we live. So of course we want to check out George. What would we put our child in at Wimbledon? How many candles? How's he going to celebrate? What job's he going to do? Will he go in the military? And then you almost have to stop yourself and say, is this healthy?
I mean, I can't believe, Afua, that it's 10 years since that long Lindo wing waiting to see the easel go up outside Buckingham Palace. Days. Certainly felt like it anyway. Days of anticipation. And, and obviously Kate had a very difficult pregnancy with George, and
the labour always takes ages with the first baby.
And the excitement around his birth, and then that first appearance on the steps of the Lindo wing to the boy that we then saw in the box at Wimbledon.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to believe that it is almost 10 years. And like Tessa said, there's a real interest in the Waleses, in that family. I mean, they're the most popular members of the royal family, and that's clearly for a reason. I mean, Kate, incredible at Wimbledon. She has this early years project. William has this project on homelessness. But we are also going to look to the kids to see what they do next.
And they're an asset.
They are an asset.
They know that.
Yeah, and when we have royal engagements, when we see all of them together, I mean, the pictures are great. They look like they're great kids. Prince Louis is always such good value. Princess Charlotte, again with her fabulous sunglasses. I really wish wish I'd gotten a pair for myself. But if we focus on Prince George for a second, of course he is our future king. And turning 10 is a big milestone. When we think about it, in another 10 years' time, he may be in the Navy, in the Air Force, or attending university. And then we start thinking about royal weddings and royal babies.
Exactly.
It's coming closer.
And the interest in them is only going to get stronger and stronger. And I completely agree with Tessa, whether or not it's healthy or unhealthy is a really valid question, but that interest is not going to wane. It's going to get a lot stronger.
It's about managing it, isn't it?
And it's about managing
it. How do you do that? Balancing the need to let this boy be a child with also preparing him for what is his legacy.
I mean, I think he's pretty lucky in that his mother is obsessed with the theory of parenting, and something that she clearly takes very seriously. And I think she does have her head screwed on and knows that that they have to give some access. And the fact that she's always the photographer, that's not just because she's interested in photography. That's another way where she and William can control the narrative. They can say, look, aren't we being generous by giving you these pictures that we have carefully curated and done ourselves?
And Daisy, your point about the armed forces and what the future holds for Prince George. I mean, for all other members of the royal family, there's been a fairly set path, hasn't there, into adulthood.
And he almost certainly will go into the military. I think it's very interesting that he is very close to his grandfather. And you hear that a lot, that, Charles has built George's wood, the Arboretum. He's built, in Wiltshire, he's built the playgrounds and the sheds and all these things. And I think although you see at events, Louis is the one climbing onto Charles's lap, I think Charles and George do have quite a special relationship in the way that Charles and the Queen Mother had a very, very special relationship. They call him Grandpa Wales, like the Queen called her grandfather Grandpa England. There are lots of these traditions that go on. And again, this summer, we'll see, I'm sure, them all go up. We understand that the King's going to continue the tradition of summer in Balmoral. And a lot of that at August Bank Holiday is about the grandchildren.
The King and Queen celebrated 400 years since William Shakespeare's plays were published at Windsor Castle. They were accompanied by the Duchess of Edinburgh and the Duchess of Gloucester and mixed with several famous faces, from Helena Bonham Carter to Dame Judi Dench. Tessa, this relationship between the royals and Shakespeare, and in particular our King and Shakespeare.
Yeah, I think it is deep. Certainly, it's poles apart from the way he was brought up, and Philip and Elizabeth's preferences. They weren't hugely aesthetic or particularly cultured. They were much more sort of an action couple in many respects. There they were at Cowes Week for Philip and Elizabeth with her horses. And actually, Kenneth Clarke, the great doyen, first really to break ground with art documentaries, first to be given access to the Royal Collection and turn it into a BBC documentary. He remembers very vividly that the Queen and Philip weren't very interested in the artistic interpretation of his film, but Charles was. And he stood apart from his parents in that respect. And likewise with Shakespeare, we saw in his first address to the nation and beyond, when his mother had just died, "May flights of angels take thee to thy rest." He absolutely is a man for whom I think the literary, the artistic speaks louder than the macho, the physical.
Yeah. And I think he himself recited Shakespeare, didn't he, at the celebrations of the 400th anniversary since Shakespeare's death. This is a man for whom the arts are extremely important.
Yes, absolutely. And he's, just as Tessa was saying, he's very sensitive. He's very, very bookish. I mean, that's one of the things that Camilla and Charles have in common. They frequently talk about sitting down together, in their drawing room, reading books, and that reading is something that they're both passionate about. He's talked about preserving Shakespeare and the language. Camilla's talked about how she really hopes that books aren't messed around with, in a sort of modern, slightly woke way. So that it is something that they both feel very, very strongly about.
And Camilla, of course, has her reading room.
Camilla has her reading project and so on. And Charles, it's not just Shakespeare. He reads passionately. I mean, he can recite great big bits of the Quran.
Yes.
His interests in literature and
hugely well
studying.
versed.
Yes.
It also goes into that idea of Charles. Remember when he was photographed by the oak tree when he'd just become crook, that idea of a kind of old England, a genuine England, his passion for architecture, an idea of something really more rustic and not backward looking. He's still a progressive individual, I believe, but somebody who cherishes aspects of the past. And Shakespeare, as the bard, kind of sums that up, doesn't he?
Let's talk about the Sussexes now, because a frustrated Meghan Markle is said to blame the damning royal revelations in Prince Harry's spare memoir for the couple's plunging popularity this year. That is according to a source. At the time, it was reported that Meghan may have had reservations about the book, and it's been alleged that she's kicking herself for not being more hands-on. Afua, what do we think about this? Is there any truth in this? That we talked at the time of the publication of the spare that she had very much stepped back and allowed this to be Prince Harry's moment.
Yeah.
Might she now be regretting not being more involved?
I think we need to kind of put this into context as to where we are. I mean, it's what we call silly season at the moment,
Yes.
where there is a lot of stories swirling around about lots of different people. And is there much of a grain of truth in it? I don't know. You know, we have all these kind of royal sources, these men in black cloaks or whoever. Who are they? Where has this come from? And there's a lot of this around at the moment.
Well, let's talk about that, because there's an article published by Radar this week with the headline that the Sussexes were having a trial separation.
And, you know, if we really dig into that one, what that one was trying to say that Prince Harry's going off to the continent of Africa to make this documentary for Netflix, while Meghan's going to be working on her own projects. Now, I mean, first of all, he's not going to be making that documentary for Netflix anytime soon because there's a writer's strike in Hollywood. So he's not doing that at the moment. He's not, unless he's gone off to do some reconnaissance work. And Meghan on working her own projects just sounds like two normal people to me, right? One's doing one thing, one's doing the other.
With small children.
You know, it just sounds like a normal couple doing normal things. And I think especially when it comes to Harry and Meghan, and I will say William and Kate as well, people love to extrapolate everything and anything they can.
Well, it's clickbait, isn't it?
Exactly. It is completely clickbait. Silly season. Sorry, Date. Silly season. And there is just a lot of it around.
The only thing that slightly rings true for me is the idea that those around Harry and Meghan might have wished that Meghan had stepped in a bit more. I suspect that she hasn't said to people, I wish I'd stopped him writing X, Y, and Z in the book. But one thing that I think is clear is that Harry doesn't listen to very many people.
No, I think that's
and increasingly so over the last 10 years or so. And he would say that's him being his own person. And but a lot of people say you still need to listen to good sage advice, and he doesn't seem to have done that. And I suspect the only person that might have got through to him and might have been able to say, do you really need to talk about the dog bowl? Do you really need to refer to Camilla in these ways? Might this be, bad in the long term? The only person that might have been able to do that, I suspect, was Meghan. Whether or not she's regretting it, I think that's stretching it.
I think the bigger regret is that he didn't have a cooling off period before publishing. They published too quickly. I refuse to believe they were that strapped for cash.
Did they publish too quickly? I mean, was it not delayed?
It was
by
delayed.
the death of the Queen?
More than once.
But the whole thing was telescoped. Really, there was this kind of panic. What are we going to do? Build the Sussex brand, get the cash coming in. Publishers were on their tail. They wanted it now because they were big. But actually, in order to get a perspective on what's happened and to let those feelings just ebb a bit, when you're in the heat of the moment, you have a go at your brother, you feel angry with your dad. And actually, it's only as time lets your sentiments be filtered that you can make a clear judgment. And I feel for him there. I think if he'd written this in 2 or 3 years' time, it probably wouldn't have sold as many copies.
No.
But I think in the long term, he'd have been happier with it.
And in terms of the copies of the book, it has emerged that holiday hotspots are overflowing with abandoned copies. Holiday specialists on the beach say they have so many, they're at a loss with what to do with them, with local bookstores and libraries refusing to take them.
But how do we know whether these abandoned books have been read or not read? I mean, I nearly always... I'm going on holiday quite soon. I've already got the books I'm taking.
Yeah,
and I know that, if I've read them on holiday, I will leave them behind.
It's a hefty handbag to be carrying in your luggage.
I won't be paying for my luggage, for the weight of my luggage on the way back. So I don't really understand this story. It just seems a bit bitchy to me.
Again, like I said, silly season, it's a bit of a reach. you know? And actually, does it not show that a lot of people are
Have bought
reading it and like us are sensible and are swapping the books for the holiday souvenirs and leaving
whatever
them
is
behind?
said about the Sussexes does generate more and more headlines.
Absolutely.
Hence the articles, the rumour mill,
Yeah.
you know.
And actually, no matter whether you found the content of the book and the stories that he told difficult to stomach or not, and whether or not he should have delayed, the book was a good book. It was a good read. Obviously, it was ghost-written, and I think it was ghost-written pretty well. So I'd be surprised if a lot of people had bought it, spent the money on it, and not bothered to read it.
And then there's mugs like me who've actually got 2 copies.
So do I.
I bought my copy, and then to watch that podcast with Dr.
The fireside chat.
Matty, you had to buy another copy. That was the deal. So what do? My mum didn't. I'm not reading a book by that prince, she said when I offered her my copy. So I've got 2.
Well, that's Christmas sorted.
Exactly.
Staying with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, they were reportedly denied their request to fly back to the United States with President Joe Biden and his wife on Air Force One after the funeral of the late Queen Elizabeth II. I mean, it's a bold request, if true, Afua, that they wanted to hitch a ride back.
If true.
With POTUS.
If true, it's a bold request. But I kind of feel like if this is true, perhaps with somebody saying, you know, do you think we can get on Air Force One? And they went, no, probably not. And they went, OK, we'll just take our own plane. I feel like that's probably what happened, because I would like to believe that Harry and Meghan are not that big-headed to think that they could just walk on Air Force One. I mean,
Daisy looks like she's about to disagree wholeheartedly with your sentiment.
It was, for want of a better word, shot down because they thought that this would be, you know, it would be a bad move for relations between the United Kingdom and the US. And I just think, I mean, how much truth is there in all these stories?
This story, to me, doesn't pass the sniff test. It just doesn't feel like a story that's legitimate, I'm struggling to believe it. The only thing that today I'm thinking is we haven't had any denials at the time of filming right now. We haven't had denials from the White House or from Harry and Meghan, and I would have expected them to deny that they had requested a lift on Air Force One. There are people saying that the timings don't work out anyway.
The logistics going back to Washington, they then need to get back to
the
California.
logistics, and that actually, the Bidens left before Harry and Meghan were ready to leave, and it doesn't work. So I don't know.
But it's being used to kind of portray Meghan's faltering political aspirations, isn't it? They'd also invited Jill Biden to the Invictus Games, and it's reported that she declined that invitation because effectively you've got to pick a side.
And let's remember, she had been to 3 Invictus Games. Maybe she was just Invictus gamed out.
Yeah.
But there is a bigger point at play here, and I thought we saw it very much in that successful visit when Biden had a bromance with the king and they had a moment, and you have all the trappings of state and the Welsh guards and the military music, and you realise that when you're part of the institution of monarchy, you're strapped into Britain with all the pomp and ceremony that comes with it. And Harry and Meghan not only have left all the tinsel and the tiara aspect, but they've also attacked the brand. And so they're outside the institution and they're again the institution. And I think that makes it very challenging for political players who are symbolically trying to maintain the special relationship, like, for example, the Bidens. And I don't think that Harry and Meghan probably thought that through. If they'd looked at history, they could have seen it play. Edward VIII was stopped from going to America before the Second World War because he'd been controversially to Germany. You have to really watch your step, because even if you've left the royal family, you're still sort of weirdly attached to the brand, to the institution.
I think the Jill Biden story, again, if it's true, is really sad because, as you said, she's been to 3 Invictus Games, but she's been to 3 Invictus Games because she passionately believes in helping veterans. It's one of her things. And if she has felt she couldn't continue to support the Invictus Games, which we know she does support because of having to choose sides, but then if you remember back to the G7 in the West Country, she, as you were saying about picking sides, she was getting on brilliantly with Kate. They did it because her other big issue is early learning in early years.
Yes.
And that's what she shares
Her
with
background in
Kate,
education.
From her background, exactly, in education. So if she really has had to choose between Kate and Meghan, that would be a terrible shame.
Don't you
then
think
again,
that the Invictus Games transcends the
Yes.
family
Well,
drama?
yeah,
It
I
certainly
do.
should, because
I
it's
do.
such an important thing that Harry has created.
Exactly. I was just about to say that all these causes, whether it's Kate's Early Years Project, whether it's the Invictus Games, all of these causes should transcend any of this family drama. And also, why do you have to pick a side? Why does it have to be Kate versus Meghan? If there's one thing I'm fed up of, it's pitting women against each other. I find that so problematic.
This is one of the in the story, which obviously none of us have been able to verify or not. The implication was that it was the British government who advised Jill Biden that it might not be a good idea. Now, if that's true, I think that's terrible.
Yeah,
if that's true.
But also,
terrible.
the Invictus Games was before all the sort of Harry and Meghan moments, with the exception of
Absolutely.
Oprah. You know, it was midway through last year. And I do think we need to remember, I've been working with JJ Chalmers, a veteran of Afghanistan badly, and he considers Harry his friend. He says, look, he changed my life, Tessa. In 2014, that man changed my life.
And
I think
deserves
we have to
credit.
remember
That is what we
Harry.
need to be seeing more of
Yes.
now.
Exactly.
isn't it? We
Yeah.
need to be seeing
Exactly.
more of that.
Exactly.
That is all we've got time for this week. My thanks to Afua, Daisy and Tessa. If you want to join in the debate, make sure you leave a comment. We will be back next week with all of the latest on the royal family. We hope you can join us. We'll see you then.